Welcome back to Justice Unfiltered, guys. Trillions in debt, millions losing health care, and a top official finally confronted under oath. Is the truth being buried under politics? Watch how it all unfolds and why this debate could affect every American household. Let's break it down. Stay tuned. The details matter.
Thank you, Chairman. So maybe we could stick to a couple of facts here, as previously discussed, and that is that if you made $1 million last year, you're going to get about $84,000 in tax relief with this bill. If you made under $50,000, you are likely to get about $1 a day. The President said that we'd have 90 trade agreements in 90 days. We're 89 short because of the manner in which some of these allies have been offended. We want trade balance for sure, but we also want to make sure that it's done in a manner that will last, not subject to the whims of the administration. I understand, Mr. Secretary, that you don't agree with some of the economic forecasts that have been projected as it relates to the big, beautiful bill. So Penn Wharton says this bill will add trillions of dollars to the national debt. The Yale Budget Lab says this will add trillions of dollars to the national debt. Well, we're 0 for 2. But how about Maya McGinnis? Not exactly known for their socialist leanings. They say this will add trillions of dollars to the national debt. Well, let's go to the Tax Foundation, hardly a left-leaning political organization. They say this will add trillions of dollars to the national debt because the money's going to be borrowed. Here, facts should matter. The advice of experts should matter. We have seen the bond market's reaction to some of these proposals. They're jittery. But you know what? In this committee, we listen. The administration is putting its head in the sand on this debt issue. The facts are going to be hard to escape. So let me turn to the impact of budget reconciliation as it relates to health care. In addition to adding trillions to the U.S. debt, the bill will cause 16 million Americans to lose part or all of their health insurance, according to CBO. We know what the consequence will be of losing health insurance for the American family. More visits to the emergency room, more postponed treatments, more bankruptcies that will come because of it. The problems that people have with health insurance only mean that later on the problems pile up. Bad health, the challenge that is now going to occur for our rural hospitals, surely many of which will be forced to close. Cutting more than $1.5 trillion from Medicaid, Medicare, and the Affordable Care Act certainly will mean job losses. No industry can sustain $1.5 trillion in cuts while we borrow money for a big tax cut that, despite what has been said here today, still favors people.
The Speaker opens with a factual comparison of how the proposed tax bill impacts different income groups. Those earning over $1 million would see a significant reduction in tax liability, whereas those under $50,000 would only benefit marginally. This points to a regressive effect, where wealthier individuals receive disproportionate benefits. Legally, Congress has broad discretion over tax policy, but politically and ethically, the disparity raises questions of fairness. The statement invites viewers to reflect on how tax legislation is structured, who it favors, and who it leaves behind. What do you think? Should tax cuts be more evenly distributed? Here, the Speaker references multiple nonpartisan institutions, all projecting that the bill will add trillions to the national debt. These aren't fringe opinions. They come from respected academic and policy think tanks. This segment serves to dismantle any assumption that only political opponents object to the bill. The Speaker argues from authority and consensus, which courts often rely on when interpreting legislative intent or economic impact. Do you believe expert analysis should guide national policy? Let me know in the comments.
Overwhelmingly at the top. Let me say, in regard to the testimony, Mr. Secretary, that you've offered, there's another key consideration here. You're suggesting that the improvements at the IRS have all taken place in the last 6 months? It's because of what we did with the Inflation Reduction Act. That's why the improvements have taken place, the technological upgrades that have taken place as well. We have a pretty good understanding of this. We want to use artificial intelligence for better tax collections. But all of this just happened in the last 6 months. That's our understanding based upon the testimony. The Commonwealth Fund, cuts to Medicaid and SNAP are going to lead to the loss of over 1 million jobs. The American Hospital Association estimates that tens of thousands of hospital jobs will be lost as a result of these cuts. Furthermore, a professor at Yale has said that this will conservatively cause tens of thousands of unnecessary deaths. Worse health care, job losses, more borrowed money. The American people deserve considerably better than what we're being told. But let me offer this challenge, Mr. Secretary. We would be prepared on the minority side to work with the administration and direct tax relief back to people under $400,000 of joint income, as opposed to the suggestion that is being offered here today. And if you disagree with the number that I offered about tax relief for somebody who made $1 million last year, let me give you the last 30 seconds to speak to that.
The Representative Neal, I have great respect for you. We've had good conversations, but respectfully, if I weigh 1,000 pounds and you weigh 50, and I gain 10 pounds, or I gain 10%, I have gained 100,000. That during President Trump's first tax cuts, the share of taxes paid by the high end of taxpayers, they increased by more than 7%. And I'm sorry I chuckled when you talked about the IT at the IRS. The program is 35 years behind schedule, 35 years, and is wasting $2 billion a year.
That's why we put the extra money in, Mr. Secretary.
No. The extra money went in for bodies, and whistleblowers acknowledged that standards were being lowered to bring in new agents. The money is not the issue here. It is how the money is spent.
That's exactly right. We agree on that, how the money is spent. And the last point that I would make...
It has been spent poorly.
Let me make this last point, Mr. Secretary. Do you agree with the idea that in 2017, that the federal government, emanating from this committee, borrowed $2.3 trillion for that tax cut?
What I believe is that everyone on the Democratic side voted for the biggest blowout for the deficit in history, and that we are suffering from that. This past tax year, we will have between a 6.5 and 6.7% deficit, so I find it very difficult to be lectured to by people who created the largest deficit in history when we were not at war and not in a recession.
So I negotiated with Secretary Mnuchin the pandemic relief bill. If that's the reference point. That's where overwhelmingly the money went. That was not a bad infusion of money. It worked. The Economist magazine and the Financial Times said in January the American economy was the envy of the world. I yield back my time, Mr. Chairman.
Well, the spending was not the envy of the world.
The Speaker transitions from economic policy to healthcare outcomes, citing the CBO, Congressional Budget Office, and other reliable sources. Under budget reconciliation, only simple majority votes are needed to pass major changes to healthcare funding, including Medicaid and ACA provisions. The argument is grounded in legal consequences of budgetary choices, reduced coverage, and economic strain on healthcare institutions. The Speaker emphasizes real-world effects over political theory. Do budget decisions like this prioritize the wrong sectors? Should healthcare cuts ever fund tax relief? Here, the discussion shifts to the IRS specifically, whether recent technological improvements are the result of legislation or prior planning. The Speaker argues that the Inflation Reduction Act enabled real change. The Secretary downplays these gains, instead criticizing long-standing IT failures. Legally, Congress funds and oversees the IRS, so questions of how the money is spent are vital. Both sides agree accountability is key, but they clash over timelines and effectiveness. This is not a sovereign citizen argument. It's a fundamental policy disagreement over public spending efficacy. It accuses the other party of historic fiscal irresponsibility due to the 2017 tax cuts. The speaker suggests that current criticisms of the deficit are hypocritical. This isn't a legal argument, it's a political framing. However, it underscores the legislative accountability loop. The judge, if this were a courtroom, would recognize this as rebuttal testimony, shifting blame, but also introducing evidence that context matters. No specific ruling, but the hearing reveals deep divides over taxation, debt, and health care. If you found this breakdown helpful, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss our next courtroom or congressional breakdown. And tell me in the comments, do you think the Secretary's responses were solid, or did the facts win out today?